welcome to vShips. My name is Leanne Taylor Knight, and I'm with the DeBruce Foundation here in Kansas City. We have some great panelists to introduce to you today, but before we get started, we'll hit a few housekeeping notes. First of all, we would love for you to have an open dialogue with us today. So we're going to encourage you to use the chat function and share questions that you have along the way. We'll have an opportunity to be able to have some of the panelists answer those questions towards the end of the experience today, but chat along with us and share your experiences, your reactions, your questions as we go. Also, at the end, after the panel, we would love to hear your stories about virtual internships. And so there's a short survey that we'll throw again in that chat section for you to actually be able to share with us and give us your reactions. One of the things we do with our vShips Roundtable is to start with a poll question each time, the same question. We're just wondering where you are on the virtual internship program journey. We're bringing to you guests from all over the country who have had some experience and are here today to talk to you about how to maximize those experiences. But where are you? Have you started? Have you maybe had a conversation? Have you not started anything at all? Just share that in the poll so that we as panelists will be able to relate to who you are and where you are on that journey. If you encounter any difficulties today, technically, while we're in this, just throw those up in the chat. Also, make sure that as you're asking your questions, sharing reactions, or speaking about technical difficulties in the chat, that you make sure that you send that to all panelists and participants so that everyone can see the reactions and your questions. So again, we're so happy to have you here today. As many of you know, we're here with a specific emphasis today to talk about how to up your vShips game. And I know when we're in fall and sitting here in Kansas City, the home of the world champion Super Bowl Chiefs team, we love our games in Kansas City. But you know, internships, it's no game. We learned in May of 2020 that there were 49% in fewer internships being offered than there had been in May of 2019. And that's why we as a foundation said, we've got to do something about this, because any kind of a fellowship, internship, returnship, apprenticeship, those are all really important ways that individuals get exposure and experiences to expand their pathways to future career opportunities. And we also know that it's super important to you all in industry for you to get a window into that talent and to connect with them. That's what we've heard. That's what we've seen across our other internship panels and our vShip panels. And we're just here today to be a community of learners. So join us in this open dialogue, because it is now my great pleasure to bring to you our fabulous set of panelists today. They will each introduce themselves, tell you a little bit about their organization and what that organization does, where they're located, as well as where they are sitting today, since most of us are virtual, and then to also be able to tell you a little bit about their own virtual internship journey. And then we'll go into some questions around onboarding and orientation, and around accountability and management, and also into the space of recruitment and some other questions that you'll hopefully throw in the chat. So I'll start by introducing Tyler Knopfer. Tyler?
Thanks, Leanne. You'll notice from my panelist photo, that was before the pandemic, and with the level of stress, it's just sort of taken off the rest of the hair. But I really wanted to thank Leanne and the DeBruce Foundation for hosting this. I'm happy to share any of the insights that we have. My name's Tyler Knopper. I'm chairman and CEO of US Engineering Company. We're a mechanical contractor. We also do manufacturing, and we do mechanical work. And what that means is that for large commercial facilities, we design, install, and then maintain and service mechanical systems, plumbing, piping, and HVAC systems. And we've been around for about 130 years. And one of the things that's always been very important to us is thinking about the next generation. And so internship programs, as well as externship programs that we've done for teachers that we've brought in, have always been, or I shouldn't say always been, but especially within the last 15 to 20 years, have become a really important component of what the rhythm of life at US engineering looks like. So this year, when the world went pear-shaped back in March, April, and May, while we might have thought, well, okay, internship programs are secondary to the survival of the organization, fortunately, we had great leadership from our Chief People Officer, Rebecca David, and from Desiree Sharp, who runs our internship program, along with other excellent individuals like Kevin Stoddard out in our Colorado office. They said, no, precisely now is the time when we need to double down on making sure that we make this a worthwhile experience, because we were going to have 25 to 30 people on internships throughout all of our offices across the country. And so when that happened, that team got together and they essentially said, okay, whatever the old model was not going to work. And one of the things that I was most proud of for that team, and also for the interns who participated, was to say, we're just going to burn this down and we're going to figure out how to do this differently. And I think it was really in that crucible that they came up with really good questions for the potential mentors and managers of the interns who are going to be at US Engineering, as well as what those actual programs look like. The bottom line is that it all had to be about flexibility. And they were asking questions like, if you can commit 10 hours as a manager or you can commit 10 hours as an intern, we want to make those worthwhile experiences for you. So they really had to rethink what they were doing. And at the end of the day, everybody came. In fact, we ended up picking off some stragglers from other internship programs that just flat out got canceled. So I was really proud of our team. It wasn't easy by any stretch of the imagination, but you don't get to be 130 years old by thinking just in the moment. I feel like in order for us to be able to continue thinking about the future, our internship program is essential. And this has really just gotten us thinking in a whole lot of different ways about what those future programs are even going to look like. So again, I'm super happy to be here. Thank you so much, Leanne. And now I'm going to turn it over to Jasmine from Snap.
Thank you, Tyler. That's absolutely amazing to hear. My name is Jasmine Burrell, and I am a creative strategist at Snapchat, otherwise known as Snap Inc. I work specifically across the beauty and CPG brands. So I work with like major powerhouses like Procter & Gamble, Estee Lauder, and L'Oreal. So I was actually the intern program lead this summer for my New York office, because even though I'm from Kansas City, born and raised, I am based out of New York, and I was intern lead for this program. So of course, when we initially had our internship program set up for this year, it was going to be an in-person program. And so we really wanted to still keep our interns, because as Tyler mentioned, like, it's so crucial and it's so important to be able to have this stepping stone as you get into the actual working force. So we wanted to do everything that we possibly could to make sure that we can keep our interns and give them a Snap experience as much as like feasibly possible. So with that being said, our selection criteria was already pretty much picked based on if the people were already like local to the area, and we didn't get much of a chance to pivot in that avenue of it. But I think that we have come to understand after doing this as our first virtual program this year that moving forward, we absolutely want to be more flexible in our hiring practices and the way that we actually look at interns in the programs and specifically their locations. Understanding that as a large tech company that we only have so many offices across the country, we have realized at the end of the day, we are a global platform. And so it's important to get voices that are from all over the world, and particularly all over the countries and areas that may not have headquarters, such as, Kansas City and other places in the Midwest. So as we're looking forward to being the next semester, which I will also still be the lead to, we're making sure that we look into the candidates for honestly just their merit and their access, because another issue that we see is that although the Snap does have a paid internship program, that is oftentimes a barrier for people to get into the marketplace. This thing has so many internships either have a very, very low wage or they're free internships. So now that, we are able to get rid of that cost of, boarding and the cost of, housing and having to travel and like actually be like in the building, we want to see that we can get a more diverse voices to be representative representative of our company. And also, as the world gets to be more, tech and more focused, how we can grow and evolve this program as it stands. Because with my internship journey, I did not have any virtual internships, to the point where my internships were also always in person. I had about 2 before I got my first full-time job, and one of them didn't even give us computers. So it was very very anti-virtual, to where we were really, in the trenches, and, in the weeds and in the office. So we did what we could to make this a good program, and we got a lot of good feedback for what we've done, and we've implemented it across the entire company for this upcoming semester. So super excited to be here and, talk about my experience with that and the company's growth in that program as well. So enough about me. I would love to pass it over to Shannon to talk.
Thank you, Jasmine. Thank you again for having me today. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm also thrilled to be here. Again, my name is Shannon Gurley, and I'm the HR supervisor at Osborn Barr Paramore, also known as OBP. We are an independent, woman-owned, full-service marketing agency with offices located in St. Louis, Nashville, and Kansas City. We have a particular focus on agriculture, food, and tourism. We love to say that we love helping brands tell their stories about tending the land, as well as also traveling it. And in our 32-year history, our internship program has been been amazing, has brought us an amazing group of individuals. And we've been able to hire some of those individuals on full time. We had one young man who started with us, and 25 years later, he ended up leaving after being with us for over 25 years. So he grew within our company. So our typical internship program would have anywhere from about 18 interns over those 3 offices. And again, as Tyler was saying, when the world all kind of changed, we again said, we want to keep this program growing and going. And it's been such a great part of our organization that we did continue it, obviously virtually. And we ended up having about 6 interns over 2 of our offices. And I felt like that we gave them a great summer. It's a 10-week program. We pay our interns. So I think we got a really good group of individuals. We actually had one young lady who came back to us from the previous year. So just really excited to be here and anxious to participate. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Edward Frumkin.
Thank you for sharing some of the stuff that OBP is doing, Shannon, and the DeBruce Foundation for sharing my experience as an intern. As I'm Edward Frumkin, and I completed a virtual internship at Fourth Row Films, and I currently work for the on-campus events at the University of Missouri and a member of the selection committee for the Real Abilities Film Festival. At Fourth Row is a New York-based media company which specializes in making documentaries and marketing commercials. And some films that Fourth Row has done includes Kate Plays Christine, Bisbee 17, Actress, Hey Bartender, and The Drunk Stone Brilliant Dead. And some notable clients that Fourth Row has worked with in the past includes the NFL, LG, Marriott, and others. And I started my virtual internship journey in May of this year, and I worked with them remotely from Columbia, Missouri until August before I started my senior year at Mizzou, and I'm a double major in documentary journalism and film production. And I questioned if my coworkers and bosses will like me, and I was nervous about just doing my first internship at all. And at the end of the internship, my bosses loved what I did when working on their films remotely. I can't say what they are, but they'll be great once they're in the festival circuit. And some of the things I did for them includes transcribing interviews to make the editor's jobs easier. I look for archival footage and photos at archive houses such as Critical Past and Getty Images, and also research several topics regarding the film subject matter. I love how the internship was structured. They prepare me to be a better leader and assistant when I get called to do things for a future event. I learned communicative and time management skills along the way, where I apply them to my college courses, and it has prepared me even more when brainstorming events for my on-campus events job and to write great reviews for the films that are submitted for Real Abilities. For my partial in-person on-campus job, I'll provide fun, safe, inclusive events for several communities within the student body, such as outdoor screenings, outdoor concerts, and creative arts and mask kit pickups. And for reabilities, which is virtual, I select and reject short and feature film submissions that will shape next year's film festival and showcase diverse stories of disability, either physically or mentally.
Eddie, thank you so much. It does sound like you have a connection between what you're doing now and your internship, and you're just continuing to level that up. So appreciate you being here today and actually taking time away from class. We're really honored to have Eddie because he has to be out of class to be able to be with us today. But I told you these panelists would have you excited, right? Tyler, Shannon, Jasmine, Eddie, thank you for that great launching off. Time for us to do, try another poll question here. So again, we want this to be interactive. We as panelists are very curious to know from your all's perspective in the audience, what do you think is the biggest challenge to implementing a virtual SHIPS program? You're sitting here with an intern who's done it and three folks who represent entities who have done it. We're kind of like, what are you all thinking out there? What's the biggest challenge? Hopefully we can speak into that today as we go. I'm seeing the poll numbers come through. I got to look at another screen over here. So, oh, you guys are participating very well. Jasmine, something you mentioned, that issue about having technology or not having it when you were doing an intern. Technology platforms, connectivity, and devices is rising up there as I think one of those highest ones. So we may have to touch into that. I am not surprised. But yeah, all across the board though, it looks like some people are struggling with budget, some with managing interns. We're going to head into that for sure today. Orientation and onboarding, a little bit across the board recruitment. Good thing we have these people prepared. We're going to hit those. Shannon, we're going to actually kick it off with you. Let's start with that onboarding and orientation. I mean, had to be a little bit different to go from having, double digits of interns to figuring out like on the fly how you were going to do it. And kudos to you guys for getting 6 folks in and doing that. But how do you take those onboarding and orientation experiences from good to great in this virtual experience?
Well, yes, and I think part of the thing when you have your interns in on the first day, everybody's excited. It's a new opportunity. It's a new thing for a lot of them, and we still wanted to make sure first and foremost that those interns felt welcome within our organization. We had a lot of communication with them prior to their first virtual day. We had a lot of correspondence go out to them. So when they actually logged into their computers the first day, we made sure, again, getting back to that technological issue, all interns had computers prior to their first day. So they had login instructions. They knew how to get on the system. So that was incredibly important. And then they have obviously started their day with me in HR. They got to hear the fun things like, hey, when are you going to get paid? This is when your paychecks are going to be. We tried to make it a great day in that they could meet with HR and learn some of the policies and the procedures of the company. Then we did turn it over to our IT staff, who was then able to help them kind of work through some technical issues. They went over Outlook, Slack, some of our internal programs for them. We wanted to make sure that they knew how these programs worked and that they felt comfortable using them. Obviously, we were there through the whole internship program if they had issues, but we wanted them to feel comfortable. That's the first and foremost thing that I want to get across. And then once they met with me and the IT department, we then turned them over to their mentors. All of our interns were assigned a mentor. So we wanted to make sure that the mentors and the interns had some one-on-one time together individually, obviously via Zoom or via Slack, to get to know each other a little bit more, to learn a little bit more about each other. The mentor then would try to explain, obviously, what the department does, and then further into the day, then they would typically have a Zoom meeting with their department. The mentor would then introduce them to individuals, get them to know their team and their teammates. So I think first and foremost, I think it's just so important that they feel welcomed. Again, the world was turned upside down. A lot of these individuals obviously had the tech savvy, but it is different when you're in with a company. So we wanted to just to make sure that they knew that they were supported and that they could ever obviously come to me with any issues that they had. They could go to our IT staff with any issues, as well as their mentor. We wanted them to feel comfortable with their mentor and feel like that they had somebody that they could lean on if they had questions or concerns during this time at home. Eventually, we did some Zoom happy hours with the whole agency to where they could be introduced. So again, I think that was important. You always want to make sure that interns feel the culture of your organization. And we felt that that was beneficial to do that as well. So hopefully that answers some of the questions in regards to onboarding.
Yeah, Shannon, that's great. And I know, Eddie, you mentioned, I think in something that I read, that the CEO reached out personally to you to make you feel welcome. Shannon talked about how important that was. Did you have an experience that was similar to that and really welcoming you to that film?
It was more during our orientation. As it was nice. Like I didn't feel that scared once when the 11 other interns and I introduced ourselves. Like one of my classmates also participate in the internship with me as well. And the president of Fourth Row Films, Doug Sorolla, was nice and welcoming to us. I feel that this will be a great spot to gain experience on working in film remotely, and that he will send us an email about, like he told us to send us an email about what we want to do when we are done with the internship, our 10 favorite films, where we go to school, and 3 people who I dream of working with in the future. And he played those clips while going over our inventory for what Fourth Row interns will be doing in the past summer. The onboarding of waking up every day was a little hard for me. I was interning in Columbia, Missouri, and many of the interns and the staff were in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut, and we went by Eastern time zone. And I had to start my day earlier than others and asked many times if we want this to be done by Eastern or Central time zone. But it got better during the day where I was preoccupied with the task and did not have to worry too much about the time difference.
Well, I appreciate, first, I love the fact that you did it with another classmate. So that kind of like probably made you feel more comfortable. And that's a good thing maybe for those in industry to think about when you're recruiting, even to say, your interns may feel more comfortable if there's somebody else who they know who's already there and is a part of that. And I have to admit that maybe by way of technical difficulties or these old eyes, the number one challenge, folks, panelists that we see out there is they were talking about reworking job functions for virtual settings. And Eddie, you really started to even think about that a little bit, about this job function of, hey, what time do I have to get up? I'm working with people on the East Coast. What is it that I'm going to be responsible for, and what that's going to look like in that virtual setting? So any other tips, Tyler or Jasmine, on onboarding or orienting that you found really will take it to the next level with interns who are in this virtual situation?
Yeah, I can speak on our experience very briefly. Like at Snap, we really wanted to make sure that we made all the interns feel extremely welcome and very personable. So once we sent them with all their tech and all their technology to get them like set up, like as far as with the company, we pretty much had that handled before the first day. So the first day, like they came in, like we had like a meeting of orientation with them along with the tech. We also sent them swag, like t-shirts and, like fun little ghost, like plushies. So they could really feel like they were a part of a company and a part of the internship, knowing that we are like a younger company that, has a reputation for, working with Gen Z in particular. So we really wanted them to really have, a takeaway, meaning they won't be able to, be in the office, with all the cool stuff and, the cafeteria and all that. So really giving them still a takeaway, and for them to also feel like, more united as a group because they all had the same thing. They all were able to add each other on the platform and create like, little friends and groups and little cliques, and just really make it to where they felt as if they were a community even outside of Snap, but definitely a community within Snap. So we made that one of our top priorities when it was coming to onboarding.
Great.
I would say that yes, getting everything done beforehand was really important. I think one of the big takeaways that our team had was talking about trying to make the orientation experience as interactive as possible, which is way more difficult on a digital platform. So there were some benefits to that, and there were some drawbacks. The drawback, of course, is you end up with Zoom fatigue. So they really tried to break this up over shorter periods of time, as well as smaller groups in order to work with the orientation, because we were dealing with 25 to 30 people. But one of the real benefits for us is that we've had internship programs separated by geography. We got to smash everybody together from a lot of our different offices. So someone that might not normally have met another intern from Kansas City and Colorado or Oklahoma, everybody could be in the same room together. So that might actually be something that we incorporate into all future internships.
Excellent, excellent. Well, Jasmine, I love the idea of swag too, and but talk to us a little bit. And this maybe will tee into the space of like job functions for virtual settings. But what were your best practices for holding people accountable and managing
Yeah.
people in these virtual internships? And one of the questions that's coming up in the chat, you all, is about like, what are some of the things that you might do differently? So, did you learn anything that you might do differently, maybe even in the space of this?
Yeah. So as far as management goes, we really wanted, like, all of our interns were actually nestled into a job function as far as their internship goes. So we had so I work on the creative strategy team. So we had a creative strategy interns, we have a design strategy team, we had design strategy interns. And pretty much what we did was to make sure that they were held accountable, is that we really wanted them again to feel very, very involved in the process. So there weren't just meetings that were intern only meetings. There weren't just meetings that were, just group meetings. We were bringing them into client conversations. We were using them for research and bringing them into our everyday work. And then, of course, having an overall client project to make them feel even more accountable and have like a sense of ownership, which I feel like is very, very important. I feel like when we get into the business of, like micromanaging or, things where you have to like do check-ins, you have like checklists and, just little goals of the day. While that does like work on like a granular level, we wanted them to think, especially with my department being, in marketing and creativity, to be free to be able to work and manifest on their own time. Because at the end of the day, with us as like the full-time employees, we weren't on as strict of a schedule as that either. So we felt it would be remiss of us to expect someone that is not in the workplace and, having to adjust with this crazy world that we're in right now to be held accountable, like for small deliverables. So what we did was we really brought them into our everyday functions, into our everyday meetings. I was the overall lead for the creative strategy intern department as well. So I made myself extremely accessible. I did a weekly check-in, but if there was something they wanted to talk about in between then, I was always available on Slack, always available with my calendar. They had access to our calendars. We gave them their own Snap emails. So they were really ingrained into the actual day-to-day work. And then even aside from what they were doing with their specific teams, we made them into their own function as a group as well. So when we had our final project, the creative strategy interns worked with the design strategy interns, who worked with the legal interns, to really just make their own little Snap team to make it even more impactful. So they really felt they were a part of something larger, and just really giving them that ownership and that autonomy. We seem to work very well, and we'll probably continue doing that in the future too.
Oh, so something you learned that you're like, yeah, we'll keep doing that in the future. And I heard you say you use the word Slack, set them up, their own
Yeah.
little team. That's
Yeah,
very
so
interesting.
we would use Slack, and then of course we would also use Snapchat, which I think is, people always think that's so funny, but like we do use Snapchat at work. So so they had like, so therefore it like makes it even more personal. We would use like, Bitmojis to communicate, and functions of the app. But so yeah, we weren't just only available, if it was very informal, in the sense like you didn't have to just schedule time to get access to us. We wanted them to know that we were accessible, understanding that, there were a lot of, technical difficulties and a lot of issues. And we were very transparent about, like, when we were on client calls, what the expectations were as far as, what the client was, the background of the meeting. We never wanted them to just be a face in the room. And we were always prompting them, to feel confident enough to speak up, and then having conversations in the briefs afterwards about, like professional communication, if that was ever an issue, or, praises, and just giving them really direct feedback throughout. so they can really get even more ingrained in the day to day. And like, so one of my interns, Valerie, absolutely loved working with her. And I feel like that was a major part of it, because while the actual work and the refining of the trade is, of course, what you want, when it comes to a workplace, the personable aspect is extremely important, in making sure that they feel that from not only just the immediate team, but from their intern team, was something that we really, really wanted to focus on. And especially as we don't know what the workplace will look like in the future, it might be half and half. Like, we're not going back into the office until September 2021. It snaps. So there will be a lot of adjustments that need to be made as far as, new golden rules of, engagement across the board. So letting them know that we were learning too, and we were adjusting too, and making them feel comfortable with that was really a priority for us.
Now, you guys are being all really, really positive, which I love that. But there have to be, I think about, there are challenges all the time when we're managing people and when we're holding people accountable, and especially when it's someone who, it's an intern, it's it's a fellowship, it's something that is maybe their first time experiencing this kind of an environment. So I'm just curious, if any of you ran into any challenges. Shannon or Tyler, did you run into any challenges with holding people accountable or managing them? And how are they the same as or different than when we're in this virtual environment versus what you have had with interns previously?
Well, I think at a construction company, for example, we have a lot of activities that take place out on job sites. People that are coming from a construction science or an architectural engineering background, or even people that are working in our marketing or our accounting groups as interns. The typical mold has always been about being there in order to understand and be able to ask questions on sort of a random basis as you go through and experience things. But there's so much that's hands-on in a construction company. It does present a whole lot of challenges. And that's one of the things that was just so outstanding about both the way in which the interns agreed to come into this and participate in experiences that had been developed, but even more so from our existing team members and how they wanted to manage those interns and the extra time that they took in order to develop conversations or seminars or lunch and learns that were going to help expose all of those people, not only to those hands-on aspects of the business, but to talk a little bit about what some of the other softer sides of the business needed to be. And I think we had something like 40 or 50 different people in all these various departments of the company that were scheduling lunch and learns or various virtual tours of our facilities, and making sure that nobody felt like they were being left out of an experience. But, it was a responsibility for the interns to engage. But I think our team members did just an exceptional job of trying to figure out, okay, how am I literally going to teach a class here? So it was accountability on both sides, actually.
Thank you, Tyler.
Yeah, I would agree with Tyler too, and I feel very fortunate. The group that we had this summer were really wonderful. They were great. We didn't really have any issues per se of accountability. In an advertising world, it's very important that you do your timesheets. So that may be of one thing that we would have to say: make sure you do your timesheets this week. Just so you didn't have to go back and do a month's worth of timesheets, but they were on it. The responses when asked questions or on assignments, I think, went really, really well. So we had a great group this summer, and they were able to roll with the punches pretty quickly.
Well, and it might have been because you did a good job of onboarding them and orienting them. We'll just give a round of applause, as Tyler did, to all of your managers and the people who were working with them. So it sounds like you guys did a great job with it too. So Tyler, let's turn our attention a little bit now to recruitment, and what did that look like in all that was happening across March, April, and May. It was about March that we started hearing our own DeBruce Career Corps students in high school and college and early career saying, my internship has gone away. I'm not sure what I'm going to do this summer. I just don't know that I'm going to have any opportunity like what I had expected or already been accepted. to do. So Tyler, talk to us a little bit about what you all discovered as you were going through the process and really early out of the gate and doing it, and what it meant for you all as a company at US Engineering.
Sure. Well, I think it's a great topic. It's obviously very relevant right now because of the way things fell. We had done most of our recruiting prior to the pandemic or the shutdown. We generally fill up our intern classes around sort of like the winter holidays. But we were able to be the beneficiary a little bit of other internship programs closing down, students and other friends and relations calling all of our various team members and saying, is there any way that you might be able to accommodate this? And interestingly, because we figured out we were going to be on a virtual platform, it was easier to slot a few more people in. And it really pushed us as an organization to think about, okay, well, what does the optimal number look like? But even prior to that, Leanne, I think really one of the things that you're getting at in a more generalized sense is, what is the extent to which you can engage, as Jasmine talked a little bit about, intentionally trying to create diversity in your internship pools? You know, the construction industry is notoriously male dominated. Less than 10% of the population of the construction industry as a whole are female. And to me, I think that's a huge problem long-term for the survivability of the industry. And so thank goodness for Rebecca and Desiree and our diversity and inclusion group making sure to press us and say, okay, if we're going to change over the long term, it needs to begin with our internship pool. So 50% of our interns this year were female. And that's not something that I'm putting out there to kind of get a pat on the back about. We all realize that's just sort of the first step that we need to take in order to continue to maintain this type of diversification of what our workforce looks like. That includes race, that includes economic background. And I think that if we are more intentional about doing those sorts of things, none of it's going to solve it overnight, but it just goes to show you how difficult this is. And I'm really proud of our team for putting the work in and saying, we have to start now because it's not going to fix itself. And so we ended up with a very good and diverse internship pool this year. And I look forward to making it even more so over the coming years. But that's something that our crew is certainly committed to. And I think at the end of the day, when those interns go back out and they share what that experience looked like, it's going to create a different flavor for US engineering in the market, not just the construction industry, but people who would think about, well, do I want to try and get an internship at US Engineering? Let me see what they're actually doing. And so that's kind of what the end result is. And I think that was a real benefit of being able to be virtual. We could see across all those platforms in all of our different offices.
Yeah, I appreciate your bringing that up, Tyler, because I do believe that, I mean, that is one of the differences. Both you and Jasmine have teed into that space. Virtually, you have access to talent that you have not previously maybe had access. So Shannon and Jasmine, you all were shaking your heads too. Anything else from you all on that particular topic, or did you learn anything that now, as you think about recruiting for, your next round of interns, that you'll do?
Yeah, I can hop in with that. So definitely similar to Tyler, like at Snap, we had already had our interns selected before anything had transpired. And I've actually been very vocal about the inequalities of the internship landscape in general, especially when it comes to working at larger corporate companies, based on, again, location, based on ability to economically afford to be at those internships or fellowships, and how that really does directly impact, lower economic groups and different racial backgrounds. And even when we look at, the internship or even the corporate landscape, honestly, it's a lot of, who knows who and who has a connection to who and who has the time. And so I feel like one of the good things about the emergence of virtual internships is it really does bring that point to a larger stage and for a larger conversation about equality and access across the board, and getting past that door into corporate world or any world and so we can diversify across the board. And so I really feel like, again, we had to, adjust and make these circumstances what they are. But I really do feel like, it was a blessing in disguise for us to be able to have these conversations for innate issues that may not have been noticed from before. So I'll also be leading the intern program for this upcoming season at SNAP. And I'd let them know that is something that I am definitely looking into. And there's a very much a priority for me to make sure that we have people from very different backgrounds and from very different parts of the country. And because at the end of the day, the talent is not limited by a zip code or area code. And so with that being a restraint from before, and now that's being lifted, it really is an opportunity for all companies across the world to grow and learn from this.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jasmine.
Yeah, I would totally agree with Jasmine too. Before we were limited, could these interns afford to live in some of these larger cities, St. Louis, Kansas City, Nashville, and now we're seeing that virtually you can make things work. So, it's our hopes too that we may be able to broaden our pool for the upcoming summer of, who we could bring into our virtual offices to work, even if we are back in the office, and who knows when that will be. But if we have somebody located in another city, they can be just as involved in that internship program as is somebody who's actually sitting in the offices in those locations. So I agree. It's really opened up our eyes to what all we can actually do virtually.
The thing that both of you have said, which I think is so important, is that in so many instances, you hear about organizations or even leaders that are sort of soft pedaling excuses for why it's so difficult to incorporate diversity into whatever their hiring practices are. This really takes those excuses away, or at least minimizes them in a way that previously, when you used to say, oh, well, we were locked in on working with this organization or this channel of things, it really does remove those excuses. And I think it becomes a lot less easy for people to just hide behind the way things used to be done. And to me, that should be quite exciting for the next generation, and also super challenging for people who exist currently in those organizations who are now going to be really pressured to basically do more. Like, you have to try harder. And to me, that is a great thing to push an organization forward in this current environment, but in general.
That doing more and trying harder, the no excuses piece of this, I definitely think that's something that we've learned. So I want to encourage any of you who might have questions out there to throw them in the chat. Panelists, we have a couple of questions that we're going to hit on here, but before we do, I want to start back with Eddie. And Eddie, just in this question, what's one thing that you, from your intern experience, and those of you who have been offering the internships, what is something that you would recommend employers looking to take their virtual internships to the next level? Something you'd recommend that they do, Eddie?
I would tell them that internships can happen anywhere, while there needs to be transparency and communication between the internship managers and the interns. They can be manageable and feasible outside of a company's headquarters or office. It still gives interns a learning and a professional experience in one. Virtual internships still offer networking and connection opportunities as if it's in person. Virtual internships offer interns comfort in their own homes, and they do not have to worry about being intimidated in the boss's office. And in the film industry, this has been a normal life for film editors, as they normally do not go on set. They start working and making cuts of a film once they receive the footage, the script, and the script supervisor notes. And even though the shooting of visual media has been impacted by COVID, editing has not, and many people realize more of how often the editor works remotely during this time.
Yeah, thank you, Eddie. I think the other day you said something too about research. Did you do quite a bit of research when you were doing your virtual internship?
Yeah, I was looking up several articles and related to the characters that will be in these documentaries about from their own point of view, while I'm listening to some of their interviews, and I'm connected to like which organization that they're associated, and connect them more, at least in the national landscape, than just like make it personal film.
Yeah, that's great. And those connections, that networking, all of that is so very important. You also, Eddie, when I heard you talking, I also heard you speak into the space of, you know, an intern might even be afraid to go into that main office or that boss. One of the things that we've heard from some of our other panels is when someone is concerned about do they have all the right clothes and all the right things that they would have to go into an office center every day, or when there may be barriers to transportation, not only like location of being able to have that expense when you live there, but just even in your own location, having reliable transportation. Those kinds of barriers, you know, and you were teeing into that, Eddie, those are serious barriers to help folks understand and overcome. And it's something that in the virtual world might be easier to overcome. So how about our other panelists? Something that you would recommend to employers who were thinking about their virtual internships and taking them to the next level. Shannon, let's start with you, then go Jasmine and Tyler. No, I had some of these questions.
Yeah, I think, you know, again, we've kind of touched on this a little bit, but, you know, it's important for our organization, and I challenge some of our leaders and our mentors that, you know, we obviously want the internship to be something that's beneficial to the intern. We want them to be able to grow and develop, and we want to make sure that we have all the things in place for them to do that, you know, so whether that be more technical savvy things or more one-on-one meetings, more one-on-one client meetings. You know, I really feel like your group needs to be on the same page as to the fundamentals of what all this intern is going to be doing, and, you know, most importantly, their growth and development. You know, we want to make sure that they get the most of that. You know, the worst thing you can have is after 10 weeks, somebody do an intern survey and say, this was horrible, I never want to do it again. So we want to make sure that they have a positive, impactful experience with our company. So I think that falls on us as leaders to ensure that each of the employees works with their interns to make sure that that happens.
Thanks, Shannon. And when you do that, they have a positive experience with your entire industry too. So when we think about building up our talent and our resources, Jasmine, how about you?
For me, I think the key for like any company when they're considering any internships, but particularly virtual internships, is making sure that the interns feel like they have access. And I mean that across even just as far as technology access, but also as far as access to the company's culture, access to the company's process. So what we did, because of definitely understanding, of course, that like not everyone is going to be able to have a one-on-one intern, especially at a company this large, especially with people having different workloads. It's been extremely busy this year for us as a company. So that was one reason why we took the lead role for each of the teams as like a main point of contact. But with that being said, we wanted to ensure that all the interns felt comfortable reaching out to other people on the team that were outside of me as well. So if there was a question about a particular vertical, like I work across CPG and beauty, but they want to know something about retail, we let our team know ahead of time, like, you know, look, this is intern season. Like we really made it a thing to where our internal team was pumped about it to really be accessible for these people. So we made sure that when we brought them into like our full team meetings, that everyone, that they were welcomed in, letting them know that we are all resources in here for you across any avenue. So even though, again, that's on a personable level, I think that access also is important when it comes to being understanding as far as technological differences, when it comes to, of course, the digital divide that is rampant across this country and across different economies, and, you know, being understanding, being accessible in the sense that you're being transparent and you're being kind and you're being smart and you're being fair, and just really instilling that across the team, because as Shannon said, that's going to be an impression that's going to be across the company, it's going to be an impression across the industry and across the work that they're doing as well. And it's going to really make them excited about what they're doing, that they have people that are supporting them along the way, and we didn't just throw them out there. So I think, you know, really focusing on access and what that means as far as your company's resources and as far as your company's values is something that should really be determined in the beginning and spread throughout the entire company so that everybody can feel welcome across all avenues.
Bravo. Tyler?
I would completely agree with that. And I think that if you're going to say that culture really matters to us as an organization, you need to make it very clear, both in the recruiting side of things, as well as when the interns are actually participating in the company, that they're invited to participate in that. I mean, we're looking to hire people from these intern classes. We tell them, I personally tell them when I meet with them at the beginning, we are interviewing you for a permanent position, but you are interviewing us for a permanent position as well. It has to fit. So in terms of upping what our real internship game is, we have a company that's very technically focused, people that are in the construction science or the architectural engineering programs that want to come and work for a mechanical contractor, want to understand what it really means to design and then install an air handling unit or a boiler or a pump skid. And those kinds of things are really important to learn. But at the end of the day, our future is culture based. And so one of the things that we were able to do this year with Eric West, who's one of our talent development folks, did was he put on specific seminars on things that were much more related to soft skills, how to present, how to improve your public speaking. And we got huge ratings from those sorts of things at the end of the day from interns, because those aren't typically things that are being taught in schools as well. A second thing that I think was really wonderful that we started doing a few years ago, and we can continue to do it this year, is that each region has a community service project that internship class takes responsibility for. So for example, this year, our interns in the Rocky Mountain region raised $3,000, $4,000 and donated 22 medical supply goods to Goodwill. And in the Midwest side of things, they had a virtual food drive that raised almost $4,000 for harvesters, which is, close to 12,000 meals. And if we are engaging our interns in those sorts of things that we like to do with our team members normally, it means you're really giving them a preview of not just what your company does and how you do it, but who you are and why you're doing the things that you're doing. And if you incorporate the interns into that, again, it's one way for them to enhance their experience, but it's also another way for the company to try and showcase this is what we are really all about.
Yeah, I think that's true. And we've heard that across the board. You guys have all talked about that. Even the, having the virtual happy hours, that seems kind of silly, but no, those are all important as well. And I love hearing about the service projects because I think that these are also the kinds of lessons that get taught that whether they come back and work for your company or they go on to work for somebody else's company, that just makes them, great in this respect. So love the fact that we've got a question out there. And so, hey, hello to all the educators out there. And Brett Kisker, thanks for asking this question, panelists. I'm going to ask this question. Those of you who are watching, we only have about 5 minutes left. So they're going to throw in the chat a survey. We want you to connect with us and let us know your thoughts about today, as well as the stories, the experiences that you're having with virtual internships. But Brett asked this, panelists, from a school partner perspective, do you have any recommendations for a method to convince and prepare other multiple business partners to host remote internships? So like, how do we get other people to be like you? Shannon, Tyler, Jasmine.
I think first and foremost, you need the commitment of the organization that they're going to go forth and do this. I feel like probably all of us had some little bumps and hurdles along the way, but we overcame that. And you have to work together as a group to make this transition run smoothly. And I feel like I want to tell them, don't be afraid. If you're working virtually now, there's no reason why you can't do an internship virtually. Have a group on, because we've seen it's been amazing how everybody has been able to work virtually. So don't be afraid to have an internship virtually. I feel like that you'll be blown away by what you're going to see. So take the chance, take the leap, and just be committed as your organization to do it.
I would say have several sharing platforms, like have many people to use the same Google Docs if you're trying to share like assignments, and also share like a Dropbox, especially for several like larger size videos to work on, edit. And I don't know like how many people who are listening from media production companies, but Adobe has like a Google like type share where they can share with the editors so that you don't have to go to one house to another.
Shannon and Eddie, those are great tips, like true tips for people, especially in that industry specific. Eddie, Tyler, Jasmine, other like tips that you guys would have, or like how do we convince other companies to do this?
Yeah, I would say, honestly, and I feel like we kind of all have nodded to this overall, but one thing that's most important is the takeaways that we get from our interns. And at the end of the day, those
Oh,
are the
yes.
stories of the success of these programs. So I would say, if they do have, as educators, if you have students that participate in them, if you're able to, have them show testimonials for their experiences across different industries and maybe create like a pamphlet to show that this works for media production, this works for construction, this works for marketing, this works for tech, and being able to see, that this is going to be a beneficial program for everybody. And at the end of the day, I hate to say this, but it shouldn't take that much convincing, because when we look at the current students that we have now, these like they are the future of the workplace at the end of the day. So you would want them to be as prepared and as comfortable moving into this as possible. And then also with the fact that we don't know how long this is going to be like this. So if you don't adjust to this now, you could get lost in the shuffle as the workplace and the landscape continues to mold and change. So I think if you're able to have the power of the voice of testimonial, which is one of the oldest rules of marketing and advertising to work, if you're able to, again, show that, this is something that progressive companies are doing to make sure that they are with the changing landscape, and just really, harping on the value of the accessibility that these have for all kinds of students when it comes to the university level, or even when it comes to the high school level, because now you can even do, again, younger people as well. So I think just really touching on all those benefits as they come, and really just, positioning this as, something that is not going to leave after 2020, would be really be like, a
I
strong,
want to thank
powerful
you guys
narrative.
for being with us. They're about ready to yank us off the stage. We're going to give a round of applause to all of you all. I thank you so much for being here. Tyler, you get the last word. You got 30 seconds. How do we convince others?
I'm going to let you in on a little secret. I don't want to convince others because I want all the best interns. But in all seriousness, I do think that it is incumbent upon educators, superintendents at the high school level, as well as people running these programs at colleges, to just take a chance and reach out to business leaders and industries that you want to try and give access to your students to. I mean, I can't speak for everyone else, but I'm certainly very open to the phone call if you want me to come and do a virtual panel like this to talk about our internship programs. So.
Thank you, Tyler. Thank you, all of you. We are all in this together, I think is what Tyler was saying. And definitely today, our panelists have brought you ideas for upping your vShips game. So let's get out there, let's maximize, let's do it. Thanks so much for being with us today. Thank you, panel.